Everyone on the island of Sodor knows that wherever Thomas goes, Annie and Clarabel go too. The three friends are inseparable. They love running up and down the branch line, singing songs to each other, and wouldn't trade it for anything. One day, Thomas was waiting for Henry's passengers to board his train at the junction. As he waited, he chatted with Henry's coaches. They remembered Thomas from his days as station pilot, and were glad to see him again. They told him all about their adventures on the main line. Thomas was so enthralled, he didn't notice the guard's whistle. "Do come along, we mustn't be late. Do come along, we mustn't be late," sang Annie and Clarabel. But Thomas didn't sing. "Goodbye," he called to the other coaches. "I hope I can hear more about your other adventures soon." What fun it must be, Thomas thought aloud, venturing all along the main line. Those coaches have certainly had their share of adventures. Needless to say, Annie and Clarabel had given up trying to sing. Later, Thomas had shunted the coaches to the carriage shed, and then stopped for a rest. As he slept, Annie and Clarabel conversed. "Why don't we have any stories to tell?" Annie wondered. "We do," replied Clarabel, "only they're all about Thomas. Going fishing, losing our guard," Annie added. "Racing Bertie," finished Clarabel. "Wonderful stories, mind you, but—" "We were merely along for the ride," Annie sighed. "Would be nice to go on the main line again," smiled Clarabel. "Who knows what we'd see nowadays?" At that moment, Thomas awoke. "So I'm not good enough any more, is that it? What nonsense! You're not fit for the main line nowadays." Annie was going to tell Clarabel that they weren't fit for the main line anymore, but Thomas's words made her so cross she changed her mind right then and there. "We're quite fit, thank you. Besides, it would be nice to go with the other engines. Perhaps they won't ignore us." Thomas was shocked. Well, fine," he huffed. "I'll just take other coaches." And that's how it was. The next day, Annie and Clarabel were added to James's stopping service, and Thomas used the old coaches. They said nothing to each other as they left the junction. At first, things went well. Thomas felt pleased. "Do come along, we shan't be late," he sang. "Do come along, we won't be late," grumbled the first coach, "if you focus on the line and stop that wretched singing." The second coach muttered in agreement. Thomas was speechless. As they approached Terrence's field, Thomas whistled gaily to the tractor. Not long after, Bertie Bus rolled past, and Thomas whistled again. "For goodness sake," grumbled the first coach, "how many whistle boards are there on this branch line?" "I was only saying hello," Thomas cried. "No time for those sorts of pleasantries on the main line," retorted the second coach. "Not when there's a timetable to keep to." Thomas's heart sank. This wasn't what he'd expected at all. He was miserable for the rest of the day. He didn't want to admit it, but he missed Annie and Clarabel dreadfully. At the end of the day, Thomas was at the junction with his last train. He was having a drink and feeling quite down when Henry fussed in. "Every station, there's a timetable that we... you there, Thomas, yes. Come take these coaches away at once." Thomas looked up. At the rear of Henry's train were Annie and Clarabel. "These silly things haven't stopped singing." "Do come along, you'll all be late." "I've been on time all day, thank you." Thomas couldn't help but laugh. At once he coupled his coaches to Henry's train. Henry snorted off indignantly. "I'm sorry, you two," said Thomas sadly. "I shouldn't have been so rude." "My day has been dreadful," interrupted Annie sadly. "Ours too." "We missed you dearly," added Clarabel. "Those mainline engines treated us awfully. Some adventure that was." "Disgraceful," huffed Thomas. "They should be so lucky to have you on their trains." The three friends stopped, and then they laughed. It was good to be together again. Thomas, Annie, and Clarabel stick close together nowadays. They still bicker, as good friends do from time to time. But from that day on, however, there was no talk of leaving for the main line. Annie and Clarabel concluded that the only story they wanted to tell was of an engine, his two coaches, and their peaceful little branch line.